Fingers crossed, second time round, the video works. No one knows because no one saw the first one. So this is take two with Edwina Griffin. Hey, Eddie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, JT. Great to get a second chance, right?
You know, it's so good because I'm wearing the same shirt as yesterday. Looks like you're wearing a similar shirt.
Same.
And
I was like, you know what? I was comfortable with that one. We'll wear that again.
So for those that are completely unaware, and if you're certainly not as old as me, you may not even know who Edwina Griffin actually is. But I can tell you she's an entrepreneur. She's a deep thinker. She's a massive supporter and huge lover of the fitness industry. She has worked in fitness businesses. She has owned fitness businesses. She has consulted with fitness businesses. And just like the rest of us, keeps getting sucked back into the vortex that we call the fitness industry. As hard as she tries to get away, she keeps coming back. She also has more letters after her name from degrees and postgraduate degrees than anybody else in the fitness industry. In fact, cumulatively, we add up all our letters, we still aren't close to how many Eddie has. But today I've got her on to really explore kind of what's going on in the mental health space with us as owners, but also with team members. So it's really important, I think, at this present time to be looking holistic at our business, our people. And I thought, who better than Edwina Griffin? Edwina, what did I miss?
I don't think you missed anything, JT. Maybe just that I should say what I do in this space, which is
that's good. Show your credibility. Go.
Yeah. I do remember you asking that yesterday. Just that I've been teaching meditation and mindfulness for sort of about 20 years, and now my company works in that space in other companies around emotional intelligence training and mindfulness training and mediation. So this sort of space of culture and leadership in the space of what we're going to talk about.
So let's rip straight into this because you mentioned that word 3 times. I'm telling lots of people about this, that they should be offering mindfulness strategies for their members.
Yeah.
But what the hell does mindfulness actually mean? I'm telling people to do it and I don't even know what it means, let alone practice it myself. What is it?
You probably do, but let's go into it in a bit more depth. So the actual definition is being in the present moment. So that means being in the present moment, not in all levels. So mental, physical, emotional. So rather than our thoughts tend to like to go into the future, particularly at the moment, future that we can't predict, or the past where we could have been, it's bringing it right back into the present moment. So it's the mindfulness movement, I guess, there's so many benefits of mindfulness. So I don't know if you want to go into that space or.
Well, I guess, I'd like to. Is mindfulness airy-fairy bullshit?
Look, it's funny you say that, JT. I know when I brought it into my centre probably 10, 15 years ago, it was seen a bit that way, but thankfully researchers caught up on the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. Now there's so much research around it. We know a lot more about neuroplasticity and the potentials of what we can reshape and retrain in our brain. And so I think it's really got a lot more science and backing now for people to listen and notice and realise the benefits beyond just airy-fairy floaty that it might have been seen as previous to all this research or prior to all the research.
So you were saying it brings us physically present, mentally present, and what was it, emotionally?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do I do? What is a mindfulness strategy that I could do? And then I'm going to ask you, when would I do it? Or vice versa, is it when would I do this? And then what would I do?
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit like training a muscle in that you have practices, like you have a workout, if you're doing a weight session or you're wanting to build your muscles or get cardio fitness, you'll do your structured session. And then the more active you can be all day, the stronger you become and so in this space, the stronger the neural pathways become.
Right.
So what mindfulness does, one of the things we know, the benefits of meditation around reducing stress and inflammation and blood pressure and all those great things. But one of the other things that some people aren't necessarily aware of, some maybe, but is the fact that it strengthens that link between the fight or flight part of the brain, or the fear-based brain, or the emotional brain, I guess, and then the thinking brain. And what that does is that it enables us then to, when we feel the emotion in the present moment, have that ability to stop, reflect, link it to the rational thinking better, because that connection is stronger, to then be able to choose our action, I think, rather than an automatic reaction that may not be appropriate. So that's the benefit. And that seemed relevant because you're asking what you do and how. So because the more often you do it, the stronger that connection, the better we get at it. It's also shown that mindfulness and meditation reduces the size of the amygdala, the fight or flight part of the brain. So the amygdala is activated in fight or flight, which, you know, sets off cortisol and all these things. It's been shown in studies to shrink with meditation. So, and the other thing around mindfulness practices and compassion, it strengthens the part of the brain around compassion and resilience as well. So I think those.
So it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have a small amygdala.
Yes, well, the amygdala is the fight or flight. We need it. We still need the amygdala.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we're living permanently in fight or flight, and that becomes our strongest part of our brain, then we're permanently in fight or flight. And then you go into spaces such as burnout. As you know, I've had chronic fatigue, right? So if you can continuously in that fight or flight, then we're going to burn out. So it's not a good automatic response. The more we can get into the parasympathetic side of the nervous system versus just sitting in the sympathetic, the more balanced the nervous system overall.
So
as we know, burnout's such a big issue at the moment, you know, worldwide anyway. So this is a really crucial time to make sure we're doing the extra bit to ensure we're not going into that space.
So let's pause what that mindfulness might look like, what we might do.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that, and let's go down this route, because I'm intrigued, because I would suggest that most fitness business owners, regardless of the size of their business, as well as team members, would have had 10 days in Australia, probably 2.5, nearly 3 weeks in the US, 3 weeks definitely in Europe, of almost permanently living in this high anxiety, high stressed. I think I said yesterday, adrenaline, but it's probably cortisol. Is that right? As opposed to adrenaline?
It's both, JT. You're spot on with both. Yeah. It's
both of them. They're living in this phase that it's kind of up to here. So from a health perspective, what the fuck's that doing to their body?
Well, exactly. Look, there's so many factors with it. Living with high levels of cortisol is going to affect sleep patterns. It's going to affect the insulin response, which then obviously we need to be aware of for clients in terms of weight loss. You know, being in a permanent state of fight or flight also affects our rational thinking, because the rational thinking part of our brain switches off because we're in fight or flight, getting ready to be chased from the lion, or as we all know, that scenario. But if we're trying to make good decisions in our business, then our rational thinking, our ability to make good decisions, is switched off, and they sort of say affected by almost 50%. So that's not a great space to be running your business in. So I think it's beyond just, there's so many factors that are relevant in this, not just, there's also obviously immune function and gut health. So our ability to digest food, because let's face it, if we're fighting for survival, the body is protecting us just to get away and survive. So things like digestion aren't as important. Rational thinking and decision making isn't as important, because we're just trying to survive. And that's, you know, that we're all in a much higher elevated state, just as without doing anything, just by listening to the news at the moment. So I think we need to all be aware of the fact that means we need to do, if we were doing a bit of meditation before, do more. And if we weren't doing anything, start looking at it.
What do you say to the average team member, department leader, owner of a club, who you probably dealt with in your corporate world, where they say, you know what, I thrive on chaos. When we're in crisis, that's when I step up. Now, they could well be strong individuals around that. But again, do they really want to be living in that space?
Look, I think we know the peak performance curve, that some people do operate better with an element of stress, but research shows that you continue at that level and your function or ability to perform at that level will decrease. That's just cognitive fatigue. It's impossible for any of us to function at that level under ongoing stress at our peak. It's just not physically possible, and there's plenty of research to back that up. So I guess when I'm talking to managers who say that, I'll show them the research, and research speaks for itself. I think there is an element that we do with a little bit of stress, but we haven't seen this sort of level of crisis in our generation anyway, JT, have we? Like, we haven't been through world wars. We haven't done this stuff before. So I don't think it's an area a lot of us know a lot about. So we've got to trust the science on this one and go with it.
Yeah, I like the idea of, and particularly in our industry when so much is based around science, it makes sense for us to trust science in this instance. So if somebody has been living in those high levels and really not logically thinking, what would be 2-3 initial signs that perhaps there is some burnout happening with them at the moment?
Look, I think it's a really good point, because one of the challenges when you are really stressed is often you don't recognize it.
Yeah.
I know when, I mean, as you know, I collapsed from workplace bullying a few years ago, and I thought I was fine. And it wasn't till after the fact that a few people said, oh, you know what, I noticed that your workshops weren't as concise and you didn't see me stuff. I'm like, I wish you'd said something to me, because I thought I was coping. So I think one of the things is around the mindfulness itself is about checking in and actually going, how am I feeling, and acknowledging that. So recognizing it's very important, and labeling it is really important. Ooh. Because if you recognize it and label it, you've got that now as, okay, that's a thing that I can look at and it's separate from my identity. I think one of the biggest risks with anxiety and with stress is we become our identity, and we think that is who we are. It's like, I'm stressed, I've lost my job, or I've just put people off, I'm an asshole, or I'm a loser, or whatever it is. No, you're not. This situation is really challenging. So I'm feeling emotional, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious. What do I put that out in front? That's not me. I've still got all the amazing qualities I always had. Now, what do I do with that anxiousness? What do I do with the sadness? Okay, I need to nurture myself. What can I do around that? And I think there's an element in this piece of looking out for each other and just noticing. I noticed on your call this morning, you were saying look out for each other. And I think this is a time where we need to really have an extra eye for one another, because when people are very stressed, they often aren't checking in, and they often don't recognize it. But so one of the things is to stop and notice the emotions that you're feeling. If you're having trouble sleeping, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, the usual signs of stuff, fatigue, there's, the fogginess in the brain, there's all these signs. But typically if you're that stressed, you're actually then, particularly I think as ex-athletes or fitness professionals, we tend to know to push through. Yeah. I'll be right, she'll be right. I'm tough, I can do this. You know what? In this situation, that is not the right approach, because this isn't a sort of stress situation like normal that will come and go. We don't know how long this is going to go on. So we need to get on top of it early on, because once you're down that path of extreme sort of stress and excessive overload, it's a long road back.
And is our stress heightened by the fact that we actually don't know where that end point is at the moment?
Yeah, that's what I was saying to you yesterday. Exactly. That's one of the things in this environment is the amygdala is activated in anything that is, with anything that is unknown, like any unknowns, any threats. And so in this situation, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
So we need to really look at what we can control and what we can't control. What we can't control is what's going on in the world right now. What we can control is setting some new goals. So as leaders, as I said yesterday, it's like the leaders and managers need to set some new goals for their team that are short term, so that we feel like we are going somewhere. We need to reassure team members more so than usual, so that there's some things for the amygdala, for our fight or flight brain, to go, okay, here's some routine, here's some normality. Okay, it's safe, I'm safe, because there's so much unknown. And if we don't give our team that extra reassurance right now, it's just going to add to that element of anxiety, that element of stress. So there needs to be more conversations and things that you may not have said before, you need to say again, even if you think it's the obvious, just letting you know that at every point throughout all of this that's going on, I will communicate with you if anything's changing. I just want to let you know that for now, your job is okay. And, what I can guarantee to you is X, Y, Z. And that is definitely because we're all in, but because we're all in an elevated state of anxiety starting point, then we need to recognize that as managers and owners and go, okay, well, we're all slightly more reactive than normal. And so we need to allow for that and try and help reduce it.
So I'm trying to work out how to word this question, because as an owner or a manager of a team who may be stood down, or they may be on furlough in the US, or may even have been made redundant or dismissed, is it still on us as the leader to reach out to these people, do you think, during this crisis, to just check if they're all right? Or is it like, nah, I wash my hands? Not, and I don't mean that in a facetious way, but I mean like, my focus has to be over here now. They're out of my life, or do we still keep in contact with them and check on them?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly as I said, it's around that fact that, yes, you need to take the steps to give them, to make sure they're okay, to say, okay, this has happened, and to be very clear in that communication around this isn't about you. Everyone knows this is going on right now, so it's not a personal thing. This is about the environment. Have that conversation, offer them any support you can, but then there's a point as leaders where we have to, it's none of our business anymore, to an extent. And there comes a point where you offer your advice, always offer the support. You can call me any time. Is there anything I can do for you right now? Ask those questions. And then at that point, I think, JT, I think we said yesterday, and I've spoken to some people too, we were taking on a little too much around their employees. And at the end of the day, we can't control their destiny, and it may be that they have other things going on. So there's a point where we have to recognize, okay, I've put it out to them. Some people will need to go and take some time out by themselves if they've just been told they've lost their job. And we need to respect that, and also recognize in ourselves, hold on, am I doing this for them or for me, to an extent? And I don't mean that in a nasty way. I just mean sometimes in our industry, we give so much and we get a lot out of giving. And sometimes we can go into a space of, we need the reassurance that they're okay so that we feel better. And it's like, maybe they don't want to share right now. Maybe they need their time to go and lick their wounds, and they'll come back to us when we're ready. So I think there needs to be that real respect of, you've offered it, step back, and then you need to shift your focus onto the team that you are working with, because they need that extra reassurance. They need those new goals. And so really just sort of, offering it, and then moving into an area where you can help. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do for the people who aren't helping with us. Yes, we can try and connect them with other people or give some suggestions, but there's definitely that thing. And I think I brought up yesterday the social contagion thing, which I think is quite relevant for our industry. I wouldn't mind popping that in now if that suits, because
go for it.
It feels relevant in that I think because social contagion, we said, is around the fact that emotions are contagious. And we all know that. So that can be positive or negative. At the moment, there's a lot of negative. And I think as fitness professionals,
Eddie, if I'm wearing if I'm wearing my mask and my gloves, does that mean my emotions are not contagious?
That's exactly what I was about to say, JT. Spot on. So I don't need to speak anymore. That's pretty well it. Get the gloves and masks on and it's all good. No. So around that, because we're quite empathetic people, and that's a great thing. But what can happen is we'll go into empathetic overload because we take on stuff that really isn't our stuff, and we have to we know about being conscious about not watching too much of the media and trying to control that. But I think there's also a really important time right now when we're dealing with clients all day who are struggling, and a lot of people are. We take all that on, and then we're listening to staff and potentially letting go of staff, unfortunately. Then we can easily go into that space of feeling all of their pain. And then we go home at the end of the day and we're totally depleted and we've got nothing left. So I think there needs to be real awareness around the healthy boundaries that we're having as leaders in the business, and as personal trainers, and as the person who may have lost their role, who's got to go home to their family, and being conscious of the fact that, hey, emotions are contagious, but that also means I can go home and I can choose to try and change the vibe and have a joke and make my home a positive atmosphere and do what I can to shift my own brain chemistry. We know, neuroplasticity, we know all that research around neurons that fire together, wire together. So let's go home and lighten things up. And I think that, that leads into another whole point around bringing some humor into the situation and into the meetings and what that does as well.
Well, let's go down that road now, and let's think for our owners and our department leaders out there that are watching today. How do they cope? What are some coping mechanisms for them in this time where their adrenaline and cortisols are up to here? They're taking on, many of the issues that perhaps their staff have dumped on them. And then they come home and they've got to homeschool their kid. So, like, what are some coping mechanisms that you could share?
Yeah, no, sure. I think we discussed, and I said yesterday, we discussed the gratitude piece. And I want to bring it up, and I'm going to bring it up in the same way I did yesterday, in that I like benefits finding rather than gratitude right now, because I think it's very hard to be grateful for everything that's going on right now. But I think what we can do is, and it has the same sort of gratitude feeling in the body, is try and go, what are the benefits in this situation? What is it that I can say is a positive? I've got more time with the kids. I've got my family. I've got the gym, or if you don't have your job right now, then I've got whatever it is, and trying to find some benefits, because the research basically shows that there's part of our brain responsible for compassion for resilience improves by just 30 seconds of gratitude a day. That's Harvard research.
30 seconds.
So yeah, and that's contributing to our resilience, to our emotional intelligence, to all of these things. And so we need to.
Is that just thinking grateful thoughts? Is that speaking grateful thoughts? Is that writing grateful things down, or benefits, as you say? What is that to get that benefit?
It's actually embodying the gratitude feeling.
Right.
And so typically the reason they say gratitude diaries, it's having that mindful moment. Like, as I said, so when I say mindful moment, it's bringing in all parts of yourself into that gratitude right there. So I think we discussed as well some of the research, like Martin Seligman did some of that research, where he got people to write down 3 things that they're grateful for. And they move from the 15th percentile to the 50th percentile in happiness.
Now they had to do that. I think you said yesterday they did that for 30 days.
No, that one was a week. I checked my research.
Oh, it was only a week.
I couldn't remember. So it was Emmons and McCullen was the other one I was referring to, where they got people to write three things they're grateful for. They had another group that wrote down, things that weren't so good, and another group that just wrote down what was going on in their day. And that study went for 10 weeks. And they found their level of happiness went up 25% in that time. They also found that on average, they went to the gym 1.5 hours more a week, the ones who were writing the 3 gratitude things. So they had a general feeling of being well, a general feeling of liking their life, or a happiness on all levels. So those research studies, like, there's 3 different studies there. You sort of got Martin Seligman's, you've got Harvard Uni, and you've got Emmons and McCullen. Very reputable researchers, and they're all showing the same sort of thing in terms of the benefits for health, for happiness around gratitude. So I think at this time, it's a hard pill to swallow to go, I'm grateful, but I think there needs to be a point where we can go, okay, how can I put a positive slant on this? And maybe it is as little as, and that's where I bring, there's so much research around happiness. The brain chemistry shifts with happiness. Even if you just bake it and put a pen between your teeth and grit it, that's still going to change your brain chemistry to make you smile, right? So do it. Bring some happiness and stupid stuff into your day. And so some of the things we spoke about yesterday, like the breathing, you said, oh, what happens if someone's just had a shocking day and had to put someone off, or just been put off? What can they do right then? And I said to you, look, breathing is, and we all go, yeah, we all know how to breathe. And and if we mention the box technique of 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold, or the counting 4, 2, 6, or the pranayama, switching nostrils, I like the breathing brings us right back into the sensory. And the other thing I shared yesterday, which I'm going to share again because I think it's fun for family. Yeah, I'm going to do my little song, JT, because I heard someone do this the other day. I said this, and I loved it because we all get so serious, you've got to be able to, and this is why I'm going to do it, because you've got to practice what you preach, right? I don't care if I'm an idiot, because it makes me laugh and it works, right? So one of the things with breathing techniques that I've had clients say to me is, I can't get my kids to sit down and go, hold 2, 3, 4. Singing is a great way to bring people into that regular breathing pattern. So if you're having trouble yourself or with your kids, then bring in a song. And so I'm going to share this little one that I heard someone on Facebook the other day, because I loved it, and I found myself singing it all weeks. So the other thing I like about this message is it's a positive message. Yes. So we know by neuroplasticity, repetitive positive messages on a subconscious level will shift us. We know by Bruce Lipton's work that the physiology of the cells will respond based on the environment that we perceive. So if I keep telling myself I'm well and happy, my brain, the subconscious doesn't know the difference, will believe it. So the song, here we go. It's like, every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. You can sing too, JT. Little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. Every little cell. That's it. Yeah. I thought I'd do 4 verses. No, but my point is, it's really easy and really fun. And you just find a song you like. It brings you into that rhythm. And also, if you feel ridiculous, it'll make you laugh anyway. So,
what a great song to teach your kids at the moment. Yeah. Around immunity and health. It's a great little song. I am really worried, though, about this singing thing, I think you've got shares in TikTok, because I can imagine that this humour. I mean, you mentioned it before, and I really want to explore this a bit more, Eddie, is this idea of humour, because the world is very serious now. We've got no sport to watch. We've got no theatre to watch. We can't go to the movies. We're so serious. We've almost lost this concept of laughing either with people or at ourselves. We just had a good laugh at ourselves then. Everybody else had a good laugh at us while they were watching that video. What impact does humour and laughter bring to reducing that cortisol or that adrenaline at that level?
Yeah. Well, we know that laughter does shift brain chemistry and reduce cortisol levels and bring in the sort of serotonin and the happy drug. There's also the research, Barbara Friedrichsen showed that it takes 3 positive statements to 1 negative to make us feel well. The other research that shows 5 positive statements to 1 negative for us to feel okay. There's a lot of research about the positives and the happiness and so I think the brain chemistry stuff is really simple. And the great thing about laughter and happiness, as I said, is if you're not feeling happy, just start being stupid, even force it. It's one of those things that they've shown, just being in that smiling position. So I can sit here, I haven't got a pen sitting here like that, and grit my teeth. Yeah, you do it, JT. Perfect. Looks much better on you anyway. You can do that and your brain chemistry is going to shift, right? So go straight into that, and laughter, it changes your whole brain physiology, and it shifts the cortisol levels down, serotonin up, and changes that. And so that is what it is. And one of the other things I want to bring in around sound, because it's similar in terms of the benefits of sound, there's a lot around humming, the benefit for self-healing, and also for sound healing. And the principle behind sound healing is, with resonance, that if cells are unhealthy, then they will be vibrating at a frequency that is not in alignment. So if you bring in sound healing or frequencies of music that's healthy, using solfeggio frequencies or even just music you love, then it will bring the cells into the correct resonance for good health. So music...
When you say music I love, is that Queen, is that Taylor Swift, or is there a particular beat? Vivaldi's Four Seasons?
Yeah. Well, look, I think when I'm talking sound healing, there's probably a little bit more science around the frequencies of sound that can be used in sound healing and the vibrations of sound. Right. However, I've linked this because you were talking about happiness and laughter and that feel-good feeling. And I think that in itself is highly important. There's, music therapy and the rhythms of our body. And so whatever you resonate with is going to be in alignment with you. So whatever you love, whatever lifts us up, there's so much research around, for example, the sounds of thunder will put us into fight or flight because we're primal animals. Yeah. And yet if you hear the sounds of birds tweeting, that's also shown to bring cortisol down. and put us into the parasympathetic state. So that, again, there's plenty of research around the sound and what that does, and it's something underestimated. And so when I think of that, I also just want to mention the other thing that I think is underestimated is smell. So bringing in all of these elements, and I think at a time like this, it's bringing in every sense that you have, all the senses of the body, and bring in the relaxing oils like the lavender oils and burn them around the house, and do things for your kids and things that they don't need to know about. Just bring in every level so that, you know, the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, the olfactory are all being activated. Or if you're trying to focus, bring in peppermint oils and the citrus oils and things like that are going to hit every level. And I think we also discussed yesterday the earthing and bring in, I know you asked me.
We're going to come to that. Because
all right.
It's
just a problem with doing it twice. So.
Yeah, no, I want to come to that. So at the moment, our coping mechanisms, regardless of almost whether we're an employee or an employer, we're talking about how we breathe. That slowing our breath down will reduce that. We're talking about some laughter. We're talking about singing. We're talking about the smell that we might be in. Mm-hmm. And then the bit that you talked about right up front was this concept of meditation. And I know there's so many variations of meditation, but I kind of want to debunk the first myth before we explore the variations to meditation. And the first myth is, I don't need to sit cross-legged in a corner and do I?
No, but I'd quite like you to do it because I want to see it.
That's because you want to laugh. That's that humour coming. I get it.
No, but it's a really good point. In that, I think that's what a lot of people thought or still do think.
I agree. I think that's why they don't meditate. They go, well, I can't do that, right?
Yeah, and it's a really good point to bring up, JT, because I as you know, I first started meditation and I was introduced to a meditation that I didn't like, and I decided that, you know, it was breath meditation and body scan. It wasn't my thing to start. It wasn't my entry point. It didn't resonate. And so I then decided I couldn't meditate. So similar thing, you know, I just wrote it off. And it wasn't until I then came back and found a different approach to meditation that resonated more with me. For me, that was just initially visualizations and mantras. And then it opened a whole thing, and now I like all meditation. But I think the first point is there's not one entry point for meditation. There's a lot of different approaches. And I know sort of, yes, the Buddhist is the foundational principle, but there are a lot of entry points. And so I think we all come in wherever it resonates is important. And no, you don't have to be sitting. One of the things with sitting, you know, cross-legged, and one of the things with sitting, I know initially for me, I had back injury and knee injuries. I did it sitting on a chair. One of the things with sitting is that the energy centers of the spine are aligned. So that is one of the reasons they say sit up, you know, because we've got those energy centers through the spine. Yeah, that. So you can do it sitting on a chair, or you can do it sitting against the wall. But remember, there's also walking meditations, and Buddhists do that. So meditation is around focusing your mind on one thing. So if you choose that one thing to be walking, it's about being mindful in that moment. That is a meditation. Or it's being guided through a visualization, or it's choosing a chant to focus on. And they're all forms of meditation. And I think it's about being present in that one thing and focusing on that one thing. Sometimes it'll be sound healing where you're just listening to the sounds. They're all meditations. And so, JT, it's a great point, because it may be that for some people started it being a conscious walking meditation. And I think particularly for fitness professionals, one thing I learned about myself was that I kind of thought, I'm always in my body and I work in my body all the time. But it wasn't until I did meditation and slowed down that I realized I was training, but I wasn't in my body.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's that differentiation. Like I was still in my head. It helped me on a physiological level, because chemically your body shifts, right? And your brain chemistry shifts. But my headspace was still crazy, because I wasn't necessarily coming right into the body for it. So I just wanted to differentiate that when I talk about walking meditation. It's easy to go walk and then keep your mind in crazy monkey mind. So you need to bring that right into my foot stepping forward, I'm feeling the air around me, and being present in that walk.
So I would like to think I meditate, and I'd love your feedback on this. Tell me if I'm in the right space. I like to think I meditate when I run.
Yep.
And I used to run with headphones and just listen to tunes or have tunes playing. Now, when I run, there are no tunes playing, but I'm more conscious of listening to the sounds around me. So while I run, I'm actually listening to the sounds, and that I feel that that's my form of meditation. And I guess, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but people can't really judge how you want to meditate either, can they?
No, not really. And I think the thing with meditation is, as you do it more and more, and JT, you probably know this, if I said to you, JT, I want you to sit and listen to that music in the corner and do it, if you're meditating, it would be no different. So there's your test right there.
Yeah.
Because if you're able to just focus on one thing, and if the run is just a side thing and you're getting a double benefit there, then if I say to you, go and just do exactly what you do on your run, but you're not running this time, it wouldn't be a challenge.
Got it.
It'd be just as easy. So I think that's, that is something you just test. But if you're doing it, I don't think there's any one rule. I think one of the challenges with doing something quickly is being present throughout all of that. But I think both things, we know exercise is hugely important as well for brain chemistry and to reduce stress, So I think we have to recognize there's places for all. And if you can bring both into that run, and I would probably say bring a little element of the slow down meditation in as well. If I was, leading someone in it, I'd be like, bring both in and just make sure that we don't catch ourselves out on that.
I'll be rest assured my run is not quick.
You joined the club. I call mine a shuffle now. I think I call myself, I've gone back to the Cliff Young shuffle. I'm showing my age right there.
Now, for those that want to take this to the next level, let's talk about this thing called earthing.
Yeah. Yes. So I know you pushed me through some research yesterday, and I came back pretty fast because I've had this debate with people a lot where, because as you know, I'm a believer in earthing, but there isn't a lot of research on it. So I just want to say that up front. But one thing I probably didn't explain yesterday as much, which I'm going to share now, is that there has been some research. And so it does, the research that has been done shows that it reduces inflammation, blood pressure, can help reduce pain. But there are others that will dispute the research. And as I said yesterday, I feel like you give it a shot and try it. One of the things in today's society that we know, this is old news, but is that we are disconnected generally. We wear shoes now. We're not connected to the earth. At the end of the day, we came from the earth. The frequency and the vibration of the earth is the foundations of humanity, of all that is. So it's certainly not going to do us any harm. So, and I think, I'm a believer in sound healing and frequencies and sound, and it all comes back to the same principles. So the earth's frequency is back to basics for me. So get your shoes off, feel the frequencies of who we really are. In our day, we've got shoes on, we're in concrete buildings, we're walking on concrete paths, we're kind of losing that connection with the earth. There's been enough research around nature and the benefits of us being in nature, cortisol levels going down, blood pressure going down, that if you bring that logic in, to me, it's actually in pretty close alignment with the earthing principles. And one of the things I said to you yesterday around earthing, I know as well, was just the fact of bringing us, the point I made previously slightly, which is bringing us out of our mind and down to the feet. If you become conscious of the sensory, that's a meditation. So the earthing is kind of a meditation, because you kind of suddenly feel that earth under our foot. We don't often connect with bare feet into the ground anymore. So that brings us into the sensory body versus out of the thinking body. And so it can become a nice meditation to get us out of thought into feeling.
So it really doesn't matter what we do. It's, for one of a really basic analogy or description, it's slowing down, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're going at this chaotic level, and particularly in crisis management, we're going at this pace. We just have to slow down. So, and use techniques, breathing, listening, earthing, meditating, to slow our body down so that we think more logically. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, it is a good summary, JT, absolutely. And there's so much around that, slowing down, and that ability to then have the point of choice in reaction. And so then we're having more emotionally intelligent decisions. Yeah. And then we're reflecting that out to other people. And then then our relationships are improving. Then there's so many sort of things that go around that. There's another study that was done, which was with organizations where they had to show appreciation for another team member every day. And what they found in that study was, one, obviously the levels of compassion went up. Two, the level of engagement went up. And three, the interesting one was, to me, the surprising one was that the level of sales results went up 50%.
Wow.
And that to me is just, again, around that emotional intelligence of putting something nice out to someone else. You'll get a result in your business as well. It's not just about, you're going to get the benefits of the insular part of the brain that, the part responsible for resilience and compassion and empathy will grow as well. So we become more emotionally intelligent. So there's all of these scientific benefits, but you're also going to get the benefit in your business. The confidence that comes within the team, that bringing everyone together, of supporting one another, the checking in more often. But at the beginning of the meetings, just, hey, 5 minutes out to point out someone in the team, like compliment someone else and do it a little more often at the moment.
And what a great way to start a Zoom staff meeting, by doing that exercise.
Absolutely. I think so. Yeah, and I think doing something like that or a joke, I think is something we need to be more conscious of, because we know that mindfulness will and meditations, so whether it's a joke, whether it's a meditation, whether it's a compliment to someone else, but certainly bringing some mindfulness moment into a meeting as well, we know will change the conversation and the potentials of that meeting in terms of the creativity that brings. If everyone's brought into the same headspace together, a moment of checking out from whatever might have just happened at home or whatever stress they've got in the background, let's just bring in a theme. Let's start with some compliments and then stop for a moment and find a positive slant perhaps to go into that. And if people aren't good at facilitating meditation, just put on some beautiful music for a minute, so whichever it is.
What a great tip, considering many of us are working from home and running between homeschooling or saying goodbye to the wife or the husband or the partner, and then jumping into a Zoom staff meeting at 8:30 in the morning to start the day from home. Actually, again, slowing that meeting down and looking internally. I love that. Now, yesterday we really split this chat in between, how owners would react and some coping mechanisms for team members. But when I went away and I thought about what we talked about yesterday, and even again today, I really can't delineate those two target markets, for want of a better description, because I think you've summed up beautifully how we should react if we are in a leadership role, or if in fact we've been given some bad news. One thing I do want to bounce off you though, and perhaps get some coping mechanisms, is that for the people that do lose their jobs, it kind of, I guess, is a bit like death. I mean, it's not a pleasant metaphor, I understand that, but we were caught by surprise. We weren't expecting it. It's been ripped from us. Is it my fault? What did I do wrong? No, I'm going to blame them. I'm grieving. So just, have you got a couple of really simple coping mechanisms around grief that people could do?
Look, I think one of the things around that is recognise exactly what you're saying, that it is, there is a process of grief. And so as the person that's let someone go, and as a person who may have just been let go, recognising that you will go through this range of emotions. Initially you'll be devastated, and then you're probably going to be angry. And so, because that's a really healthy part of grief. So allow space for that, first up. And get comfortable with being in uncomfortable emotions. The more mindful you become, the more aware you become of your own emotions, the more you have to get comfortable with going and not, as I mentioned previously, not identifying with that emotion. This is not who I am. I still have the brilliant skills that I had when I was employed.
Right.
I have all of those skills, and they can be transferred. As you know, JT, I went from fitness industry into heading up a construction company. And
you look
so
great, hard hat.
Well, heading up, that's probably wrong. Heading up the franchise part. So yeah, I wasn't building buildings. Sorry, they certainly wouldn't be standing right now. But my point of that was not to talk about me so much, but just to say that our skills in the fitness industry are very transferable. So, go and join a community group, or I'm in a community group at the moment. I'm getting so much out of being in the local community group for this whole COVID-19. And I'm meeting some amazing people who are very high up in companies and who just give their knowledge, and I'm learning a heap.
What are the benefits to us in a volunteering or being part of giving back to community? What's the benefits to us personally?
Look, I think it's that insular part of the brain, that increases around compassion and empathy. We do get all of the benefits of giving. There's a lot around the benefits of giving to others that we get in terms of the feelings of gratitude and you get as much back as you give and there's plenty of research around that. If you look at the blue studies in terms of the longevity studies that also show that giving and being part of community is a really important part. And if we talk about that, I'm talking about the connection piece that we discussed yesterday, that being in isolation without connection is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
That blows me away, that one. Can you say that one for everybody?
Being in isolation without connection is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So the benefits of being in a community group is that you're finding other points of connection. And I know, for a lot of people, and I live by myself, for me, it's been really important. I've started online meditation groups. I'm getting heaps out of it. I love it because I'm connected with all my mates who I'm not seeing. I'm joining a community group. I'm meeting people in my community I would never have met without this crisis. And they live down the road. So there's plenty of great stuff and people that you would never connect with they're actually offering their experience, their knowledge, their services because of what's going on. So there can be some nice stuff around this. Also around the connection piece, I just want to say the benefit of connection, it can be pets. So if you don't have a pet, go get a pet. That might be another way of doing it, or borrow someone else's. So any point of connection and increasing those points of connection. I saw in your call today, JT, it was awesome. You're calling out saying, anyone, connect with me, and throwing in the extra offerings right now is awesome. And that's what it's about. But there's so much that you get out of joining a community group on those levels of connection, on the level of the shifts in your own brain chemistry and gratitude. And there's a lot that goes on in terms of that, apart from all the karmic stuff, right? But yeah, I think there's more to be gained. And I think it's a really important thing if you've just lost your job to also ask mates, tell me, what do you think? Or people people that you've worked with, what is it that you think I do well? If you're doubting yourself, ask other people, because people that know you will give you the truth. And it's often quite humbling and really reassuring, I think, at a time like that, if you've lost your job, to not lose sight of the fact that those amazing skills that you have in the role can be transferred to something just as great. And this could be a new direction. It could be that you just grow with your knowledge until the fitness industry comes back on board, and then step back in and have a new profile with more people and larger networks. This isn't going to be forever.
No, it's not. But it's also a lovely time where we aren't under the stresses of work to actually work on ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. It's a great opportunity in that respect, and to learn. I'm certainly learning a lot more on technology that I would never have learned before. Never been my strong point.
Eddie, this has been just as enlightening as yesterday. And I'm sorry we had to come back a second time in one way. In another way, I feel like I described in the first recording we did, I felt lighter. I feel lighter again. You inspired me for my JT in the Raw this morning about that connection piece and how important that was. It really resonated, and I'm not a very spiritual person, I'll admit that. A former football player who's more of a rock than a caramello bear. And I'm learning to get used to my emotions, and even at 50 years of age, it's tough. But listening to you is actually very inspiring on how to not control those emotions, but accept those emotions, and in certain cases share them. And I really hope that people who have watched this today take away some really great lessons from the entire video. But I'd like to put you on the spot right now, and I'd like you to share what would be your top 3 tips that people should do straight away to stay in control in this time of crisis.
Okay. yesterday they just rolled off my tongue, and today I've got them everywhere in my head. I think the top 3 tips would be connection. Extend the connection points, whether that be for you or someone else. And you've set a perfect example of that, JT. Bring laughter in. Second one, bring laughter in.
I like that one.
They've changed from yesterday. And I keep changing my mind. 3, social contagion. I think be aware of it, of creating your boundaries and having some time out for you and allow it. As you just said, JT, you've kind of summed it up pretty well. I think that'd probably be my top 3 in terms of things that just have to be just the top 3 hit list.
Great.
Because the way we start our day is the most important, One more point I just want to make on that is when we first wake up is when the brain's very malleable. We've just come out of a deep, delta state of sleep. And so it's a really crucial time to start off positive. So set up your day really well.
So maybe we need to get you back in a couple of weeks and get you to talk about what a morning ritual would look like for people to get that day started, because that is certainly an in thing at the moment, morning ritual.
You just reminded me, JT, one of your listeners asked for what questions to ask when they're really stressed. So let's just answer that, because I did yesterday and I forgot.
Yeah, good one.
The 3 questions I would say are, is it helpful or is it harmful, whatever you're thinking, if you're going to a spin? Can I control it? Is there anything I can do around this? And if you can't, let it go. And the other one is it true? Because one of the points we made, I think yesterday as well, was around making sure that the owners have the conversations with staff, because if there's any gaps in our thinking, we'll hallucinate the gap in between bits. So if you find yourself going into a loop, and I haven't heard from my boss for 2 days, that means he's probably planning, or he or she's probably planning to let go of me, we're filling gaps in it, and the next thing your boss rings you and says, just wanted to let you know I've got this whole new project that we're going to work on, and you've spent all night not sleeping or whatever. So I think that's a really key one, is don't hallucinate.
I love talking to people people who are more intelligent than me, because you just said, which is absolutely true, when there's a void, we fill that void, and you used a much smarter word with we hallucinate. I go, we fill it with shit.
Yeah, friggin' love it. Fill it with shit. I like that. We'll swap it. I'll have you fill it with shit for this week. I'll start saying that.
I love that. Now, listen, if anybody is watching this and they want to get in touch with you, we'll put your details in the comments below. Is there any value? Here's a little call to action if we need one at the end of this. Is there any value having Edwina Griffin as a guest speaker at a Zoom staff meeting? Would staff members get anything out of listening to you speak?
Asking me?
Yeah.
Freaking yes!
What sort of, if I was having a staff meeting,
what would be the benefit? Yeah,
would I bring you in there?
Look, I think depending on what people are wanting, usually when I do that with my teams, as I said to you, I'm doing a lot with my clients at the moment, and it's around just reminding people of this information. I might have shared it with them previously, but it's kind of bringing it into the day-to-day and providing that structure at the beginning of a meeting and just starting the practices within the team. And then once I go, then you can continue it. But it's usually just giving a few of the facts around. A lot of people think differently. Some people want the science on why they're doing it. Other people want to hear it, that whole learning style. So it just gives some structure into bringing these practices in if you're not necessarily familiar with it, to educate the team and then give some practical tips. So that's generally what I'm doing with a lot of my clients at the moment. So
awesome, thanks. And of course, you can work internationally because you now know how to use technology. So if there's anybody watching from anywhere overseas, Eddie is available. I will put her email details below. For those that are watching and not looking at anything below, Eddie, what is your website?
edwinagriffin.com. My name pretty well.
That is very easy to remember, and we will share that. Eddie, it's been delightful talking to you again, twice in 2 days. I really hope the recording doesn't work so I can talk to you again tomorrow and feel even better about my life, and get a better idea of, how to control my life in these times of crisis. So thank you so much again for your time.
Thanks for having me, JT. It's been awesome.
Pleasure.